You see me as kind of a 21st century Jim Thorpe, somebody that is so athletic he dominates any sport that he plays. I know that's how you see me.
Well, you are pretty good.
And
Volleyball, but the other sports. I saw you play table tennis in Los Cabos last year, and I saw you play basketball and then water volleyball.
I'm a decent table tennis player. I thought I was better than I was because I ran into our friend Robert Blackwell, who we had on the show a few weeks back. He's a New Trier High School parent, talking about that race day seminar they had. But went down. He started this company called Killer Spin, which we profiled in Chicago City Wire, ChicagoCityWire.com. It's a table tennis company. And so I went down to see his place. He's got a place right downtown that's like a club, too, where you can play table tennis. He's got like great players, like Olympic level players. And he is like an Olympic level player.
Really?
And he...
Did he crush you?
He crushed me.
He was probably being nice,
It was embarrassing. He put such spin on the ping pong ball that I was literally whiffing. I mean, it was that... He seriously is Olympic quality. I saw him play with like the best player in the world, who was also there, best American. I think he's from the Balkans, I think, if I remember correctly. And watching those guys play table tennis, it's like where they're 20 feet from the table.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like Balls of Fury. It was so ridiculous. It was almost like a spoof. That's how good they were. But anyway, we weren't just talking about table tennis. We were also talking about some of these larger issues with respect to Chicago violence, with respect to economic opportunity for minorities in Chicago and in general. And he's got a bit of a different, different take on what some of the solutions are, where some of the problem areas are that not a lot of people have identified, not a lot of people discuss. And so I thought it would be an interesting, unique perspective from a successful entrepreneur to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship as the pathway for success and opportunity for minority families in particular. And so we're pleased to have Robert Blackwell, the founder of Killer Spin, back on the show. Robert, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning, Jim Thorpe. How are you?
Jim
That's what I thought about you, too. I thought you were like Jim Thorpe.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I feel like I let you down.
You were pretty good. You just need a couple days worth of practice, and you'll be there.
Yeah, right. Sure.
I'm taking a look at Killer Spin.
He's humoring me. But before we get into some of the policy discussion, just give us the backstory on Killer Spin and how you started the company and what it does and how it's grown.
Well, from my background, I was a trader for a long time, and in the year 2000, I was concerned about the stock market. And I was in a taxi, and a taxi driver gave me some stock advice, and I said, well, for sure it's over now. So I decided that we should, I have my IT company. I have an IT company as well, excuse me. And I decided that we should diversify into the public sector because we had never done any business in the public sector. And the year 2000, Chicago had something called the Ping Pong Festival. So we became the sponsor of the Ping Pong Festival. My company is called EKI. And Lois Weisberg, who was head of public affairs at the time, a beautiful lady who passed a couple years ago, she asked me to be the chairman. And whenever there were tables out, there were just lines of people to play. So I just kind of came up with this stupid idea of having a table tennis company because everybody in the world knows table tennis, but nobody can name the name of a brand. So in 2002, we started a company called Killer Spin, and Killer Spin exists to help people connect to the people that they care about through table tennis experiences, your family, friends, customers, and employees. So that's really what the company does, and we've become the leading producer of table tennis media in the world. We created kind of the high-end category for table tennis. And we've used it to really bring different people together. The likelihood is if you played table tennis, you played with somebody you cared about.
Yep.
Your father,
cousins,
somebody.
Yeah.
So it is a sport of family and friends, and also the digital generation.
Yes.
Almost every place where you have tech people, you have table tennis. It's becoming part of culture. And I think there are two big trends in the world. One is the digitization of everything, and the other is the rebellion against the digitization of everything.
Yeah.
I think anybody who's got kids is concerned about how much time their kids spend connected to electronic devices. It's really changing the way our brains work, the way that we communicate with one another. So table tennis is just a sport. You can play it really almost at any level, and it really allows you to form real connections with people at home and at work and at school. I have a daughter with autism, and that's what I did with her. So I bond with her. So we think there's lots of opportunities to use table tennis to build stronger relationships.
So
the whole relationship between China and the U.S. was based on ping pong diplomacy.
That's true.
That's how it started.
Forrest Gump. So as a mother of two boys, can you rent out space, or how does it work? Do we just call up and spend a few hours with you?
Yeah, you can come by, and if you want to come downtown, just call me, and we'll give you and your son some lessons. How about that?
Okay, that's good. Because I remember, as a kid, when you were talking about bonding, that's how we bonded. We'd look forward to the holidays because we'd have these outrageous table tennis tournaments in my grandpa's basement in Niles.
Grandpa Jacobson.
Yes.
So now, kind of transitioning from your success as an entrepreneur and a black entrepreneur, we had this discussion about kind of the environment for entrepreneurship, and the thing that was stunning to me, which I didn't realize, and you had a different way of analyzing this. You looked at you educated me about annual revenues from firms, kind of by race and gender. And what we find is that black-owned firms are way, 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 way in last place when it comes to kind of total revenues of business in this country. And you've got a kind of a particular perspective on that. I just kind of wanted to let you develop.
Sure. Well, I'll just give you these statistics, and this is from the 2010 census. If you take the annual revenues for businesses, including public companies of majority-owned businesses, it would be $9.4 trillion. If you take women and their husbands, it's $1.7 trillion. Women, it's $1 trillion. Asians, it's $455 billion. Hispanics, just under $300 billion. And blacks, about $98 billion. Even though blacks have double the education of Hispanics. So if you look at what's happened in the last 20 years with China and India, they've taken about 750 million people out of poverty. And how did they do that? Well, first of all, they figured out really socialism doesn't work. And they freed their economies. And what happens, how people go from poverty to prosperity, there are three things. There's entrepreneurship, which creates economic activity, the appreciation of education, and social capital. Social capital is what happens when entrepreneurs pull people out of their own communities, do things like microfinance, give them jobs. And the other is they create aspiration for young people. You're never going to have enough, charity to go around and help hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids via charity. But what happens with entrepreneurship, it creates aspiration. And then those young people prepare themselves for the opportunities in the economy. The problem with in the black community is, just try this experiment. Name two black entrepreneurs who are really successful. That means you'd know them wherever you are in the country, that don't have anything to do with entertainment.
Including sports.
No, sports is entertainment.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Sports,
right.
movies, music.
Right.
Try to name two.
Johnson at BET. That's the first one that comes to my mind.
Entertainment.
Oh, that's entertainment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
right.
right.
Yeah, right. You're right.
I'm out.
Oprah, right?
No,
yeah,
but that's entertainment.
Well, right.
That's
That's his point. Yeah.
It is, yes. So here's what happened, and this is almost unique. Now, there's no government programs to teach black kids how to play basketball and to be actors and things like that, because the market is telling them that's where to place your bet. So they prepare themselves for those opportunities, where things like engineering and math and computer science and things like that, there's no market evidence, obvious market evidence to these kids that that's where they ought to be placing their bets. And if you're in India and China, it is their entrepreneurs that have created economic activity and this visual roadmap for young people. And I've been to, frankly, given speeches in both countries. You see the energy around entrepreneurship and preparing themselves for those opportunities in the economy.
One other,
so we're missing that.
One other point that you make, and some of the material you sent me, is not just that the question you just asked about name an iconic black successful entrepreneur that's not in entertainment. You also make the point that 1 in 5 black adults work for the government. That is 30%. Blacks are 30% more likely to have a public sector job than non-Hispanic whites, twice as likely as Hispanics. What do we take from that data point?
Well, there's a couple things. One is the opportunities that came for blacks were in the public sector starting in the 40s and 50s. But the problem that we have is there's so much, and we're seeing it now, there's so much government debt that you just have to look and see what is going to happen down the road. Blacks will lose. The black middle class a lot of it is based on government jobs. Mm-hmm. So if there's no outlet, if there's no private sector industry that's coming up that can absorb that, there's going to be big issues. And I think the biggest issues is we have minority business programs that, I don't know another way to say it, that are fake. And most people would think that blacks benefit the most from minority business programs, where they actually benefit the least.
And you're talking about in private corporate environments too.
I'm talking about in all of them.
Okay.
Government. This is a little secret that black entrepreneurs, when they hear about MBE programs, for the most part, they get a little sick feeling in their stomach because they're not producing much. And if you actually go and look at the numbers, blacks are not leading in that. In fact, we're at the bottom.
So what's happening in those programs? What's the rub there?
Well, listen. Jim Webb, who's the Democratic senator from Virginia, former Democratic senator, wrote an article about this topic, about the Trump election. And one of the things he said is that he was for affirmative action programs in business for blacks. But now the only people that are not benefiting from these programs, he said, are white males. But really, blacks don't benefit very much either. You can just look at the number. You can look at the number of the size of the business. And even in that $98 billion, that number's not even real, because there's lots of pass-through businesses where you can get credit for big numbers, and there's not much employment.
So give an example of what you're talking about to make it concrete.
Well, I would just, I'll give a theoretical example here, and I'll just show you how it works.
Okay.
Let's say that there's a company that uses lots of fuel. A transportation company uses lots of fuel. Multi-billion-dollar company, so they're going to buy billions of dollars worth of fuel. And they want to get credit for minority numbers. So they'll buy a lot of fuel from a fuel company. And they say, well, we want to be on the billion-dollar roundtable. We want to get credit for our minority numbers. We're going to buy $100 million worth of fuel from you, but we want to buy it through a minority company. Well, the minority company will then get it, purchase it for $99,500,000, and then resell it to the transportation company. Well, these are real examples. This happens every day. So the transportation company can say, "Oh, we're a good corporate citizen. We're doing all this business with minorities." And by the way, anybody who's not a straight white non-veteran male now is in the diverse category. So it looks like the transportation company did $100 million. The fuel companies did 100 million or just less than 100 million, and you've got a company with $100 million in revenue and 2 employees.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it is
right.
And if you go and look at the numbers, you see what a gigantic problem this is. That means you cannot have employment without entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs cannot create employment and jobs unless there's a customer. And if there's no customers, if nobody's doing business, then you can't have a company. You can't create employment.
And this is the fundamental problem in urban centers and blighted neighborhoods that are disproportionately African American.
Absolutely it is. You cannot have the definition of poverty. In fact, you should ask yourself the question, where in the world are poor people healthy, educated, and safe? It's nowhere. And conversely, where are affluent people not healthy, educated, and safe?
Nowhere.
The issue is, how do people go from poverty to prosperity? And that's via economic activity, which requires customers.
Robert Blackwell, I'm sorry, Robert, we're going to have to leave it there, but certainly want to continue this discussion. And I'm glad you opened it up because you certainly opened up this perspective that I had not seen previously. Also, check out Robert Blackwell's profile piece in Chicago City Wire, chicagocitywire.com, on his company, entrepreneurial enterprise, Killer Spin. Robert, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.